I hate I hate networking. Like I truly passionately hate networking. I feel so awkward. I don't enjoy it. I'm an introvert at heart. I want to sit at home with my hot chocolate and my book. But everybody was like, no, you have to do this. So like there was some kind of conference. It was a women in coding conference. I forget which one. It was going to be in Seattle. It cost a lot of money to go to the whole thing. So I just paid to go to the career fair. I was like, okay, I'm going to go network at the career fair. And people are like, isn't this a lovely conference? I'm like, oh yeah. So did you go last year? Like, I'm not going to tell them I'm not at the conference. Like I've been doing software development for 6 months. Like I don't know anything. Like, it was just excruciating. And I like learned by utterly failing. I walked up to some recruiters for Snapchat. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what their company was. And I was just like, cool cupcakes, like fail, just terrible fails talking to recruiters. But every time I watched, like I'd go up, I'd try whatever intro it was. I'd watch their face and I'm like, that did not go well. And then I'd sit there and I'd watch somebody else come up and be like, oh, there are rules to how this works. Like, you don't walk up and say cool cupcakes, cool logo. You walk up and say like, hey, I'm really interested in back-end technology. I prefer C#. Do you have anything in that space? And I was like, oh, space. Okay, got to learn this. So like, I just sat and like listened to people at this career fair 4 hours. I dragged my friend with me. She's there too. And she's doing the same thing I'm doing, just utterly failing at talking to everyone. And so we're like, I got my free t-shirt, but I'm embarrassed. Got another free t-shirt, still embarrassed. And we watched how everybody talked. Out of that event, after watching successful people approaching recruiters, and the recruiter would be like, oh yeah, put down your information. Oh, here's my card. Oh, put your card here. Or just put down your information, because a lot of people didn't have cards. I was like, okay, I'm going to revamp this pitch. Like, hey, I'm Kristen. I'm switching careers. I'm self-taught. I'm really passionate about full stack web development and just want to see like what's new in that space in your company. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, that's so great, Kristen. Write down your information. Like, what's your specialty? And I'm like, oh, I do it all. Which is like the audacity, right? Like I'm looking back now and I'm like, who is that person? Like, but it worked. And all of a sudden I started getting these emails from people. They're like, oh, hey, Amazon, we're having this networking event with hors d'oeuvres. Bring your resume. We'll tell you what's wrong with it so you can apply for jobs. And I'm like, done. I'm there, Amazon. Thank you. And like Microsoft Leap, which I'd also heard about through Cal, they're like, we take non-traditional background. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go talk to you. And so then I started getting myself invited to these events. And the Amazon one, it was amazing. Like they basically bring recruiters to their events and they will redline your resume for you and be like, this is bad. This is bad. What even is this? Make this stronger. But their goal is they want that resume in the pile. So they give you good feedback. But then you're also like, you're eating your hors d'oeuvres with your resume kind of in your bag on the side and like trying to talk to people. And like, what does they want to talk about? They're going to talk about tech. And I'm like, I sat in my basement and I built their website. Like, that's not okay. Nope. Gotta think of a better way to talk about this. So yeah, so I would go to really awkward recruiting events. I also started going to hackathons. I love hackathons. They are just a giant, like, there's so much potential for good, and there's also so much potential for a giant mess. Everybody comes in with good intentions, but with like completely different skills. Yeah, exactly. And so like I started going to hackathons and I realized that if you go to a hackathon and you only sit there and you're like, I know D3, do you need a chart? I will make it in D3. Like that is not going to be a fun hackathon for anybody. You just have to jump in and be like, what are we trying to build? All right. Trying to build a full stack site with some visualizations that calls a database. Who knows about databases? You. Awesome. What can you do with the database? Oh, we need to do some front end stuff. Who knows front end? You. Awesome. And like putting those pieces together and then you learn. And so hackathons I felt more comfortable with than the networking events. And every hackathon would end with at least one person being like, oh, by the way, I work at Redfin. Oh, by the way, I work at Hulu. If anybody ever wants a job. And so I'm like, trade, yay, information. So yeah, started networking a ton, which I hate, but I got better at it because it's a learned skill.